The traditional education system in the United States has been closed, adjusted, thrown upside down, and all around for months. But one local school has been at the forefront of helping its local business community. Welcome to the Fervent 4. Did you know that only 4% of businesses ever cross the annual $1 million revenue mark? I'm Zack Miller, author of Anomaly. And with me today, I have my co-host, Tim Ryan, lead man at startwheel.org. Thanks so much for joining us. The Fervent 4 is a weekly show every Thursday at 11 a.m. dedicated to sharing insights into growing a world-class business no matter the climate. The Fervent 4 is powered by the SBDC, which helps local small businesses grow through counseling and resources like this show. If you're interested in learning more on how the SBDC can help your business, head to startwheel.org/weekly. Cara Simpson and Vicki Harrington attend W&M MBA and are working towards their MBAs. When COVID hit, they saw an opportunity to help. Welcome to the show, and thanks for tuning in. It's our first 4-video stream. This is exciting.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Nothing. Moving up in the world. I don't know how many screens we can have on here. We've talked about the Brady Bunch screens in past episodes, so we're getting closer to that. Maybe we'll get to 9 screens at some point. Someone will be in the middle, and they'll just look up all around. It'll be a wild show.
I never know. I wouldn't know which way to look, though. Sarah, I messed up. I'm looking this way to look at Vicki, and I would look.
You did it. You got it. Yeah.
Hi. Oh, there's no one over there. Whatever.
This way for Tim. Hey, Tim.
So it's the opposite. All right. So when this whole thing went down in March, were you guys just going to class like normal? How did it kind of all paint the picture for us as this whole thing went down?
Absolutely. Well, so Vicki and I, we were working together before that. We're the co-presidents of the Net Impact Club on campus. And so in December, we were working on planning a big event on campus. And then, of course, we were working our way up to that by March. By March, of course, that is when we realized that the landscape in Williamsburg was going to be changing drastically. We went on spring break, and when we went on spring break, we had no idea what we would come back to. And of course, by the time school did resume, we were no longer meeting in person. And so that's around the time when Vicki and I started putting our heads together. And that's when she reached out to Nancy with the request. And Vicki, maybe you can take it from there.
Yeah. So we at W&M MBA, we have a partnership with local semi-retired and retired executives. So mine is Nancy Turner, and I reached out to her and just said, hey, Cara and I, we want to do something. We don't know what. We've been working with local businesses through, planning events on campus, and we know this is going to be affecting them in ways that no one understands. And
like mid-March at that point, or where are we? Yeah, okay.
Mid-March. So, things had just started happening. Like, it was back when no one knew it. No one had any idea what was actually going to come of it or how long it was going to last.
We still don't know what's going to happen.
I always pretend like we're towards the end, and then I'm like, we're not towards the end at all.
No.
But here we are. We got us in contact with some people at the Economic Development Council, and literally we had the world's worst pitch. We had an email address and said, hey, how about businesses reach out to us and we'll see what we can do.
Can we hear that world's worst pitch?
That you just did.
That was about that.
We might be hearing it for the next 56 minutes.
That was it. We have an email address. Send us an email.
Okay.
And we had a good idea. We knew that we had a really great network at W&M MBA that we were able to leverage. We had this incredible community of the executive partners with a ton of business experience. We had a whole bunch of students who just went from being full-time in-person students. And we quickly realized that a lot of them who had job opportunities and summer internships lined up, a lot of those opportunities were going to be disappearing right in front of them. So we had this big community at W&M MBA that we knew would be able to help in some way. We didn't really know what help meant. We didn't know exactly what kinds of services we could deliver, but we knew that time was of the essence, and it was more important that we just got started and started meeting people and talking. So
And so what's going on right now? Are students being sent home? Are they still on campus? Explain that environment.
Yeah,
Yes, in March.
in March, everyone was off campus, right? So we, like Cara said, we went on spring break and then school was canceled. So they had a week to scramble to make all of our classes go from in person to online. We have something unique at William & Mary. It's a sprint week, and it's one business problem for a week, and usually it's in person. It's really intense. You're spending 12 hours a day doing it, and they had to actually transition it entirely virtual, which funnily enough, it was about crisis management, so it was very timely. But no, I know a bunch of students that actually, where they went on spring break, they have stayed there. So, if they're visiting relatives in North Carolina, they're still there even now.
Wow.
So it was a pretty tumultuous time because, I mean, like, professors were scrambling to figure out how they were going to take months of lessons plans and make it all virtual.
There was a scheduled business class trip to Europe. They were supposed to be going to, I think, England and Germany over spring break this year. And it was the week before people were talking back and forth of like, oh, will they cancel? Won't they cancel? Really, around March 5th, nobody had any idea what was going to happen. And they were still planning on shipping, 20 odd MBA students across the ocean and bring them back for spring break classes. There were definitely whisperings, and I think the trip was probably canceled just a week short of people leaving.
Where did you guys do your undergrads?
Well, it's been a while. I graduated in 2013.
Okay, okay, where was it?
In St. Mary's College of Maryland.
Got it. And then Vicki, what about you?
I went to American University. I graduated in 2015.
Okay, so a 5 and 7 year kind of delta between, well, I don't know when you guys started at William & Mary, but like what would you guys do in between then to then decide to then go get an MBA? Is that a traditional track? Like I'm the only person here that will never have an MBA because Tim has one, but I have one at the School of Hard Knocks, right?
Yeah, you can't join the club. No, so I like to joke I majored in people for undergrad, so I double majored in religious studies and psychology, and kind of accidentally wound up doing advertising and really enjoyed it. I ended up working at the Washington Post for a couple of years in their marketing department, and I wanted to actually come back to get my MBA to completely switch what I was doing and focus more in sustainability and strategy management. So for me, it was more of taking that opportunity to take time off from working to focus on my next steps. Cara, what did you get your MBA?
Yeah, and I think we're seeing less and less of the traditional MBA path, so to speak, that a lot of our classmates come from really diverse, interesting backgrounds. There's science people, there's people who have run their own company, of course. There are the traditional business path, but I know the school is looking to diversify in more ways than one. And my background, I studied biology and math. Since I was little, I wanted to be a marine biologist. My plan was to go into research. I got to do that for a while. I got my master's in fisheries science. I got to do some research with the Smithsonian. I realized that I did not necessarily want to be a researcher the rest of my life, but I still love science. So I joined the Peace Corps. I was volunteering in the Philippines for 2.5 years. And when I was finishing that up, I realized that the skills that I was missing were business related, that the way that I could help in the way that I wanted to help, I wanted to learn more about marketing and finance, and William & Mary had a really great opportunity. So it was a surprise for basically everybody that I know that I would go to business school, but I think I'm becoming less of the exception these days.
From the Philippines to Williamsburg, Virginia.
Well, I'm originally from Virginia, so it's a homecoming.
Did you guys both grow up in the kind of DC metro area, or you guys just
No, I'm from Kentucky.
Okay.
I'm actually visiting my parents right now, so I'm currently in the Bluegrass State.
Bluegrass Drake, got it. So what year in the MBA? So is an MBA, what, 2 years, 3 years? How does that work?
2
2
years.
years.
And so where are you guys in that first year, second year?
Halfway through, yeah.
Rising second years.
Okay. And so as students that are going through this, where you're paying for a specific thing, right? And then now you're axed basically, and it completely says, hey, like this thing that I'm paying for, which is tens of thousands of dollars is my guesstimation. I don't know exactly how much it costs, but like, how does that make you feel to be like, hey, like I got this thing and now I don't know what to do with it. Is it still going to work? Like, where did you guys think about that in the whole situation?
Well, I think there's definitely, we can't speak for all of our classmates. There's a lot of different feelings
Yeah,
going
you guys individually as a student going through that, like how does paying for something?
Well, individually, I've said a few times, I have connected with more of my classmates, with more of my professors, with more of the William and Mary resources since COVID-19 hit than I ever did before. The most valuable thing people talk about with MBAs is the network and gaining access to a really good, strong network. And that's what allowed us to do this, and that's what keeps us going.
Yeah, and it almost felt as though, especially for connections we were making outside of the classroom, the distance actually shortened, right? So, beforehand, it would have been a lot harder to get someone on the phone, or, we've built this connection with SBDC, and Jim Carroll lives pretty far away from us. There's no way we would have ever met him, but instead we were Zooming with him all the time. And so it's like, it was a situation that actually almost allowed networking to be easier in some ways, because you can convince someone to get on a call for 30 minutes versus driving. So it's like, you have to be creative. It definitely looks different. It's not an easy transition to go from in the classroom to offline, but or online. But no, there's definitely advantages to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Since the beginning of this, I've been saying that people we're showcasing too much of a negative of this instead of a potential positive, right? So a lot of people will sit and ask for, maybe they'll pray or they'll ask for a new thing, right? And they have this envision of what that thing looks like, but they don't really know what it looks like. And then somehow this thing pops up and it's presenting that new thing to them, which is ultimately what they've been looking for. And it doesn't necessarily look the way they want. So they're like, they frown upon it. They don't like it. They don't want it. When in all reality, that is that new thing, that new opportunity that they're looking for. And so I think that's, from a positivity standpoint, that's definitely something that I think more needs to come out of it. Obviously, there are tremendously negative things that are going on with this, and I don't want to like say that that's not happening, but this is a restart in many opportunities, and a lot of restarts that a lot of people have been looking and asking for, and it's like, here it is, like this is what you wanted, so make the best of it. And I think that's important. And it seems like with you ladies, that's something that definitely has happened for those who stand up, are in the driver's seat, and raise their hand. Now, there's plenty of people that are probably classmates of yours and classmates of would-be's across the country, of people just complaining about stuff. Oh, this is whatever. But you guys seem to be having a very positive and driver's seat mindset, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we throw around the phrase a lot that, we're all in the same ocean, but we're not necessarily in the same boat, kind of thing. That we're going through this, but we recognize that because we're domestic students, because we have the things set up that make all of this possible, we definitely have an advantage that, it feels like it's our duty to take advantage of the time that we now have, the resources that are still available to us. So we're just doing what we can.
So is the program you're going through, is that cohort based, or is there some flexibility with that?
So it is cohort based. There's our program's about, at last count, probably around 110 students per grade. But we also, as Cara mentioned, we have 37% international students. And so the struggles that they are going through is, insurmountable compared to what we are. And so it's something that we keep in mind, and something that we have actually sought to help addressed too, by providing opportunities for international students, because especially once COVID hit, internships are hard enough to get in the best of times for MBA students. It's so competitive. But then with COVID, I mean, they were canceling and rescinding offers and so many other situations. So Cara lost her internship because of it. She was supposed to be in Indonesia. That didn't happen. But it's struggling through to find those new opportunities. So
you all were relatively close in terms of classmate standpoints. You pitched your idea to Nancy. So when you pitched this idea to Nancy that you wanted to work with small businesses, did you already have other classmates on board, or did you get the okay and then you had to scramble and try to figure out what was next? Explain to us how that took place.
So I think our mentality was like, we wanted to make sure that we had something that made sense before going forward. So we didn't know if small businesses would want to reach out to business students, because that's something that really hasn't been tested yet. So I think, in what do they call it in the lean startup, like the smoke screen model? Like that sounds not great to refer to what we were doing, because we really did believe that we had the support to provide the services that we were offering. And as soon as word got out, we had students sending us messages, contacting us through Facebook, WhatsApp, being like, I see what you guys are doing. Please let me know how to get involved. So it was a really short window from the time that we started this to when people just started to crowd around and offer support.
Yeah, and it was crazy. We saw support from all sides, right? So we have built an organization that includes undergrads, includes grad students, is really just across all disciplines within William & Mary, because we want, honestly, it's not even that, Cara and I had an idea. We're the first ones that pitched it. But then almost immediately, it's just that helping mindset that I think is so prevalent at William & Mary, that people were just begging to join. So it didn't last the two of us very long.
Interesting. And so how did, I'm really curious to hear how you all hooked up with Small Business Development Center and Jim Carroll to get that ball rolling.
Well, so Nancy got us on an email chain that was just getting, I think by the time she added us to the chain, there was probably, 20 plus messages among professors and, faculty, different areas. And it just so happened there was going to be a meeting with Julie Sums, who is the sort of economic development liaison, William & Mary role, and some people throughout local government. So I think Michelle DeWitt from the Williamsburg Economic Development Council, she might have been on that call too. It's hard to remember, but at that point, we both showed up on camera and said what we were willing to do. And someone came out and said, this sounds a lot like what the SBDC does. And to be totally transparent, I don't think I had heard of the SBDC. So this was a totally new realm that was being presented to us. And I think Vicki and I, we spent that week probably on Zoom calls like 5 hours a day. We were talking to anybody who would talk to us, economic development, SBDC, whoever. So we had a call with James Carroll and at 1 o'clock on a Friday, and we had no idea what we were getting into with him. And he suggested that we make this a standing call every week, 1 p.m. on Friday. And I think since March, we've maybe missed 1 or 2 Fridays with him. So I guess that's kind of how it came about.
I don't think it's uncommon, though, that you guys wouldn't know of economic development, SBDCs. I mean, once you're in the sphere, I get it. But to someone on the outside, especially a student at that point that has very limited business exposure, those are very niche markets, right? Now, once you're in it, it's a thing, but like, it's kind of like you just don't know about these things until you know about them, right? Like Tim runs a lot, right? So he didn't know about specific running shoes probably until he started running, right? And so it's not uncommon. I just think that once you get into that world, then it opens up and you start seeing a lot of things, right? So like I own a Jeep. And specifically a Jeep Wrangler. And when you drive by another Jeep Wrangler, you give them the Jeep wave, right? Tim used to drive a Jeep. He knows what I'm talking about. But like, Did I know that before? No. When I'm driving my wife's car, do I wave at other Jeeps because I forget that I'm not in my Jeep? Absolutely. And they're like, who is this donkey? Like, what is he doing? I'm like, oh yeah, oops. But I mean, it's just that's understanding and getting into that world. And so that I appreciate that you guys did get into the driver's seat and were trying to control and see where that happened.
What we've seen though, since stepping into this world, now that we're here, I think we're both like, wow, we should have been here before, and why weren't we? And we see the opportunity to bring in more students, because I think we were at a meeting, Vicki and I, back in December. We went to an economic development lunch, just trying to meet local small business, because this seemed like a great opportunity for William & Mary students to talk about business with people that are doing it. And there were people there that, they made it really clear. They're like, wow, we want more interaction with the business school, and we want it here in Williamsburg. So we know that, this partnership makes sense, and we want to see it continue and grow.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that you all deserve a lot of credit for, is that you just started. You didn't wait for the perfect opportunity. You didn't have this super defined business plan or pitch for that matter. You just went out and you did it, and then you figure it out as you go. So, and there's so many businesses out there that they wait for that perfect opportunity. That perfection doesn't show up, and then the opportunity completely passes them by. So there should be more people like that just go out there and get started. And Zack was one. He can attest that the Just Do It Nike's logo is one of the best slogans out there. You just got to go out there and just do it and get started and figure it out along the way. So fast forwarding just a little bit, everything kind of worked its way through the SBDC. We're now advertising that you're willing to take on businesses. And how did that go? Did the floodgates open? What was the reception from business owners? Were they welcoming with open arms? Did you have to convince them? I would love to hear more about how that.
And do they still have that same email? Did your pitch get any better? I mean, let's.
It has gotten better. Our pitch has definitely gotten better. So, we joke all the time that, we say it with Jim too. You drive, or you're building the car as you drive it. And so, it was so funny. Cara and I, if there was an issue that was long-term, it meant we were dealing with it next week. So short-term issues were things we had to deal with that week, and then long-term was next. But so through the iterations, we developed a team called the CrimDell Small Business Network. CrimDell is based on a bridge that's on William & Mary's campus, because we see ourselves as the bridge from business at William & Mary School to the Williamsburg community. And through our email pitch, I'll have we actually developed a pretty good network of businesses that we were in contact with. And then we kept up those communications through a weekly interactive Zoom series called Crisis Conversations. So another way that we were trying to connect with the businesses, we'd have faculty members either come or present a video on a topic that they thought would be important to business owners dealing with COVID. And we had owners come and, hear whatever the faculty member had to say, but then we had them break out into sessions that actually had them talking with other business owners, talking with students, talking with that executive partnership network we talked about within William & Mary. And so from that, we were starting to just kind of understand the issues business owners were facing, engage with them, figure out what they were going through, so that when we finally had our connection with SBDC and we could form teams of students to provide counseling, we had a decent network that we got to present the opportunity to. So it was almost, by that time, it was just a new iteration of, hey, you've been talking with us for months. Now we can finally offer you these one-on-one counseling sessions.
What's interesting in there, though, is there's still more work being done the entire way, right? It's not like, hey, I put out the fishing line and I'm waiting, right? And so like whenever I hear something, I really try to dissect it and say, okay, this is what really happened there. And so you guys continue to grow relationships when no one told you to, right? Some of those went fine. Some of them went better than others, right? Some of them probably did nothing with emails never being returned to you. But then during that kind of, let's say, wait and see game, when the fishing rod and line are out, I don't fish. I don't talk about when it comes to that. But
that's a question for Cara. She can explain that.
that's another lesson.
There you go. But then you're waiting for that line, to come out, and then you go, oh well, we could still do this other thing here while we're waiting for some of those fish to get caught. And you do the crisis, what you call it, crisis conversations with some of the network of people that you met. And so you're throwing out another line, right? And so it's, some might say it's a bowl of spaghetti, you throw it on the wall and see which one sticks. And so it seems like actually many of those things did stick. But because you were throwing out so many lines, when more opportunities and more exposure came, you already had established an even more track record, even though you guys are just students during this whole time, which is very interesting. And so, so how did you took the people that were on the Zoom calls that were there and said, hey, like now we have these other opportunities for you. How did you guys get to that kind of place?
Yeah, basically exactly what you said. Yeah.
We also had our newsletter too.
Yeah. So that was another thing that we realized working with the SBDC, there is just a ton of resources that are coming out to small business owners. I think I personally signed up for maybe 5 or 6 different email lists that were targeted at small business recovery during COVID-19, which meant that I was getting some days probably 30 or 40 emails with resources and more resources and another article to read and another update on PPP. And this is what you have to read about the EIDL loans and everything like this. So we are seeing the absolute fire hose of knowledge, of information, a lot of it fantastic coming down and we saw another little opportunity to stay in touch with the people that have reached out to us and start putting together really basic newsletters. And at first that was us just gathering like 6 to 10 of what we saw as the most relevant resources that came through our email that week, sending it back out, letting people know that if they have any questions, they could reach out to us and we could dive deeper. We could explain something. We could help them find a different resource like that. I've gotten lost. I don't remember where that initial question started, but that was another thing. And so once we were able to offer these services, we already had this email list built up and we were able to put in an advertisement at the top. Hey, please come sign up for services. We're ready to work with you. We've got students on the line waiting. And that's where we are now, basically.
Yeah.
Yes. So you have several teams of students. And so what are you able to offer these businesses? It's a set number of hours?
So we treat them almost as a package deal, right? So we have teams of students, so teams of 2 students, and they work with a business owner to have these 10 hours of free counseling. And within those 10 hours, it's mainly the business owner and the student working to figure out what the project scope or focus will be. So what is it that's the most important, trying to get to their why, to figure out, why they don't have sales, whatever it might be, to get to that core issue. Then the students work with our SBDC point person, which just so happens to be Tim Ryan. And from that, they get it approved. Tim offers his expertise to make sure that the students have really figured out what is happening. And then the students research independently and come up with recommendations to present to the business owner. So it's very diagnostic. It's very much trying to provide a roadmap and helping them do the research that they might not have time to do on their own.
And so during this whole process, what have you found that is the biggest challenge that some of these businesses face?
Or you want to take that one?
Well, so probably the biggest request is related to marketing. When we first offered our services just through that email blast, immediately the big thing was, of course, the CARE Act loans, the PPP and the EIDL loans coming out, because we started, as you mentioned, right at the end of March. And I think PPP was launched it was the first week of April or so. So that took up the majority of our emails. And then second to that is getting online. People are having their doors closed. How do they continue their revenue streams? How do they get in touch with their customers? How do they set up online shops? And that's continued to be something that people come forward today. So we have some really great business students who actually have a lot of experience in marketing, who are doing things like setting up digital marketing plans for local businesses, helping them go through their social media, coming up with alternative revenue streams that make more sense in the more digital age that we're in now.
One of the things I'm curious about is how much of this information that you pass to clients or the recommendations that you have, do you have an idea like how much comes from the coursework that you've had versus how much had to be researched versus how much you have just because you're in the game, you're a consumer, you kind of know what it is that you're looking for?
That's such a great question. I think business school, the classes and the courses have helped us to come up with frameworks to solve problems. So, the strategy behind it and maybe, how a student would go about finding the issue. But then I think a lot of, you're not taught how to run a specific company or a specific business. So, we've had students that have had to do crash courses in, service-oriented businesses or whatever it might be to really figure out specific loans to apply to, understand the processes. So it's almost like our schoolwork has been able to provide that framework, the bones, if you will, but then a lot of it is just learning on the job.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely all of the above type of answer there. Yeah. And it's funny when Vicki, because something else Vicki and I did going through this process is we designed the workflow because we have a bunch of students that want to help, but we also want to be able to deliver a consistent and measurable service that we can track, that the SBDC can track and understand what's going on, and we can also quality assurance kind of thing. But so as we're going through this process, the number of times where we would refer specifically to a lesson from a professor in a certain class, I don't want to say it was because it was just things that I didn't realize I needed to know, or things that I didn't even realize I really learned were just like popping up here and there and becoming useful as we needed them.
And yeah, I think the amount of times we quote Gary Plagg in particular, he was a communications professor we have, and he helped us really develop leadership skills, right? So when you're talking with the students that you're working with of something as simple as not saying yes, but saying yes, and when you're disagreeing, it can help a lot. So it's kind of funny how much you don't even realize you internalize.
Good old Gary Plagg.
Gary Plagg. I know him. I'm glad.
An old friend of, well, maybe he's a friend of the show, but I met him at Tim's old stomping grounds in the old Williamsburg market. I don't know what that specific area was, but he's great at performances. He wouldn't call them a presentation. He would call them a performance, which I've stolen from him. I actually wrote about that in this wonderful book called Anomaly, How to Finally Stand Out from the Crowd, where I talk about basically you're performing to people when you're broadcasting. That broadcast can be in a place like this. It could be on Twitter. It could be actually on stage, wherever it might be. And so the way that you perform matters. And so I think he's going to love to hear that. So we are, what is it? Middle of July of this. This is not what you anticipated your end of, year one to year two to look like. But it seems like it's something that's going to be, one for the record books, one for you guys to remember and really have good experience from it. Is there one kind of takeaway from all of this that you're going to look back on and say, we're really glad that and I want both you guys to answer this, and maybe Tim, you answer it too, but that we look back and say, I'm glad I did that one thing during COVID.
I think it's kind of all of it, right? That we know, we've talked to people and they say, or we've talked to our graduate career advisor over at the business school, and she'll talk about how important it will be to make sure we have a good answer for how we spent the summer of 2020. Obviously, there's a ton going on. We have social injustice. We have severe economic downturns. We have people that are, upset, and just being able to know that, we took action and we were doing something and we were involved and we were engaged. What I've enjoyed most of this experience is the engagement and getting to know my community better, getting to see Williamsburg in a different light, and getting to actually personally connect with business owners going through these difficulties.
Yeah, I'd second all of that. I know. So the summer between first and second year for MBA students is usually vital to their education. So that internship can set you up with a job after. And so to kind of go off on your own and kind of shirk the traditional path of finding a Fortune 500 company to work for is really scary. And I know it took a lot of guidance from our career counselors to assure us that this was not even just on par, but so above the type of experience we could probably get at a corporation for the summer. And that, we may not have a big name on our resume because of this, but we have allowed students to tailor their education to what they want to do. Whenever a student comes to us and wants to work for us or work with us, we say, okay, well, what skills do you want to improve? Do you want to work on cash flow? Like, let's get you involved in cash flow. Like, it's a time for them to actually think about the skills they want to get out of this and help them apply it. So, I mean, it's been a huge crash course in leadership for us, 100%. And it's been just like this weird 3-month, almost safe environment to explore starting a business. So even though it's not a business, it's an organization that has a lot of intricacies, but is not a full business. We've been able to say, well, what does being an entrepreneur look like? How can we start something from nothing? And that's been so much better than what we could have been doing, I think.
So one of the things that you mentioned is that you're able to connect with the community. Does that mean when you graduate, you're going to stay in Williamsburg, or what are your plans once you graduate?
I know Vicki started looking for houses, hasn't she?
My partner did. Yeah. He's like, you seem to like it here. Let's look around. No, I mean, the job market, we don't know what the job market looks like in a couple of months. Quitting your job, going back to grad school, it's a risk, but usually in normal times, it's a calculated risk. I left my job in a very good economy, and I'm coming back in a very bad economy. So I am not turning down any opportunities. So wherever it may be.
I don't know. I think I came, like I mentioned, I'm from Virginia. I left Virginia for 10 years, and now I'm back in Virginia. And I wouldn't have come back if I wasn't interested in at least thoroughly exploring setting down some roots here. So I do like to travel. I like to have opportunities abroad, but I'm beginning to see, especially through what we have to do, the way we have to work virtually, that, where you work and where you live can be two different things too.
I have a media background. I have a journalism degree. Oh. Even though I am doing a show like this right now, I call myself a former journalist. And so I very much understand the media landscape of stuff. I'm interested in how you consume media. And media in this case, I want to... how do you consume media, which is like your traditional places, whether that be a newspaper, with a newspaper, a radio station that's presenting news, a TV station that's presenting news? How do you consume that information? And then how do you dissect that it is actually, I don't want to use factual, but factual and not guided information towards one way or another? Because you just said something, Vicki specifically, that was like, we're in this down economy. Now, depending on what news organization you watch, they're going to tell you things are up or things are down. And so how do you as an individual consume the information and then take that information, dissect it, and realize, okay, this is how I'm going to make this educated guess and this talking point kind of piece out of that?
Sure. So when when I was talking about the down economy, I was actually talking about more anecdotal. So
and that's why you have to ask the question, have context on things as well, right?
No. So we had, so we just had a group of graduating students, and they were trying to find jobs, and so companies currently right now are not hiring in the same numbers. But that's, I think, a short-term situation, right? So especially people were working remote, there's a lot of hiring freezes just because no one knew. So honestly, I think it's more of the uncertainty going forward, right? So we saw our second-year students not being able to find opportunities. I love how, we started this conversation talking about how in a time with fewer traditional opportunities, you can find something new, right? You can find something bigger. And so for me, it's like, I think it's more of finding that creativity and understanding that, what I personally came in to get my MBA, I probably won't do when I leave, and that's okay. And finding that new way of working, that new way of coming at my career is really interesting. But so going back to news, I mentioned at the top, I started at the Washington Post, so I consume them for sure. Have to shout out to my old workplace. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I try and do a huge mix of sources. I do like a lot of the traditional media newspapers, but I also, NPR. We are actually really lucky in our classes. We have access to a bunch of free news sources. So Wall Street Journal, Business Insider, lots of different sources.
So what's interesting out of that is you said you listen to podcasts. The overwhelming majority of podcasts are not through traditional journalists, right? But we're consuming that information and make decisions off of things that they say, right? And so do you look at the thing when you read the Wall Street Journal? Did you say the Journal or Washington Post? When you read the Washington Post and listen to this podcast, do you treat them the same as like, oh, I can trust these both the same way? Or are they?
Sure. Like, how do you weigh them, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the podcasts I listen to are from traditional news sources.
Okay.
So, I'm listening to like
you're the outlier in that case.
I know. I'm ruining your point because I do listen to a lot of the traditional, but no, I think it all has to come in with skepticism, right? So as much as journalists are as unbiased as possible, you have to understand they live in a certain community, they were raised in a certain way. Like, everyone has bias, whether they understand it or not. And so it's from knowing your own bias when reading the news that you can help form an educated opinion. And so I think it's really just that grain of salt mentality.
And I think to add to that, I think specifically it's exposing yourself to these different perspectives. Like, this is something that we get to do through our MBA program because, we have people from all over the world. We have people from all over the country, from different backgrounds, from socioeconomic classes, from as many different perspectives as possible for a group of 100 people, and I think that's the studies have shown that we're more able to seek out information that already agrees with the ideas that we already have, that confirmation bias. And that's something that's really hard for even, the most educated people to overcome. So I think the biggest thing is getting out there, talking to people, diversifying the different sources of information you've got coming in, and then also having that ability to make decisions for yourself and do additional research.
But what's interesting out of that is the same goes for business, right? So like, hey, I want to go talk to this business owner that's completely in a different industry than me, taking that exact same piece out of that you guys just said, like, hey, like, have conversations or be open to the story. That's like saying, hey, I own this retail shop. Oh, this person owns an ice cream store. Maybe those are too close enough, but like two completely different businesses. I don't know. I run Amazon and I run the local ice cream store, right? Two completely different businesses. But then if you have conversations and are open to that, you potentially are getting a new opportunity to learn from, a thirst for learning, if you will. And I think that's what's really, really important to that, is to be open to listening to stuff. And I think that's valuable. And you don't always hear that as much anymore as when Tim and I were growing up as young bucks.
I think Cara and I have even seen that when we're seeking advice, right? So we've been blessed to have a huge network of mentors, people willing to talk to us about next steps and, where we see our organization going. And there's often times where we will get literally completely contradicting ideas of what the next step should be for us. And so it's the idea of seeking out those different sources in order to form your own opinion. But yeah, no, and I think our crisis conversations proves that businesses should talk to one another. We've been able to simulate those situations where, a agricultural business is talking to, a home run food service, or whatever it might be, trying to keep it general.
Yeah.
thinking of participants, but also keeping it general. But having those conversations outside of your comfort zone is key.
Yeah. Something we learned about in our class, it was the acronym is stuck in my head, that that we live in a VUCA world right now, and we learned that it's volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And we were talking about how to have a VUCA mindset, and it sounds like a silly made up word, but that really is what we have needed to keep this project going. That it is an intrinsic part of it is that we don't know what the job situation, the environment will look like in a month. And we need to make sure that we are building something that is adaptive and flexible and able to respond quickly.
Shifting back to the business that you're working with, I think one of the important things that you all bring to the table and that your teams bring to the table is that you have those outside views, that you're able to introduce those new ideas and new things to consider for those business owners. What's been the reception? Because as a small business owner myself, a lot of these people, they're heads down. They're just trying to survive. That the last thing on their mind is, as you both refer to, the things that I'm going to do next week. Well, right, there is no next week for these business owners, because there's so much that they're facing right now that they're just trying to keep the doors open. They're trying to keep cash coming in. So in walks your team, and you're like, hey, we got different ideas to consider. What have the business owners been receptive to those ideas, and are they implementing those ideas? Or
yeah.
Is that yet to be?
Yeah, so far, I know we're looking back and forth, like who's going to take this one, but usually Vicki and I do agree. So so far, business owners have been really excited and very receptive to work with students, and we've had little media stories coming out, and businesses have reached out to Vicki and I after the 10 hours of counseling has ended, and they've said how great it was and how they wanted to reapply and come in for more. So I think so far, I don't think we've had any negative feedback, which is probably jinxing myself to say, but yeah, there's really no downside. So
knock on some wood, find some wood. Right. There's a bookshelf behind you, knock on that wood.
Yeah. Well, something we're definitely worried about is, how do we maintain this relationship after the 10 hours, and how do we help facilitate and help make sure that the recommendations that are suggested are actually followed through with, or, to some degree. And that's honestly, that is something that we are working on right now. We are trying to figure that out. How do we keep these people connected? How do we keep them coming back? So
yeah,
no.
Yeah, and I think we've changed our marketing tactics from the beginning too, because I think like you said, Tim, trying to convince the business to take 10 hours away from their operations is impossible, right? And that's not what our 10 hours of counseling actually do. It's usually only about an hour, 2 hours with our business analyst. It can be more if the business wants it, but a lot of it is really just extra hands that the students do on their own time. So it is a time commitment, and we see that that's probably our biggest falling off point of having businesses join is that concern of time commitment. But really, it's 1 to 2 meetings spread over 2 weeks at the business owner's time. Because we're students, we do not hold traditional hours. If they want to meet at 8 p.m. on a Sunday, our business analysts rock. They'll do it. And so it's that thing where and they're going to be so angry that I said, no, I'm kidding. No, and that's Cara and I, like, we understand that business isn't 9 to 5 when you own a small business. And so we try our best to work around schedules and make it as easy and as seamless for the business owner. Like, that's what we constantly are telling our students. If they don't like email, call. If they don't like calling, text. Like, just figure it out. And so
you figure out their sandbox. I'm a big fan of that.
That's fair.
What's the pitch? Yeah.
So the pitch, we're here to help you. Obviously, the pitch is, please go to CrimDellSBN.com. You can see it on my screen exactly how it's spelled. Just get rid of that space.com. That's all it is. And there's a contact us form if you want to reach out to us via email. It is that same CrimDellSBN at Gmail. So again, get rid of that space at gmail.com. And I mean, honestly, we will call you, we'll text you, we'll Zoom with you. Some students are in Williamsburg and will socially distance near you. But honestly, we have a bunch of hungry students eager to help. And we can provide that different perspective, that thinking outside the box.
How much does it cost the business?
$0. It is completely free. This is a free service that's helping students and business owners alike.
Cara, would you add anything?
No, she did great. That's, right. I mean,
I'm going to give it.
Would Gary Plague be?
What is that? So, 8.1?
You know what? Actually, we got advice from Jim when we started doing this, and no lie, he said, just remember that 80% is good enough. So thank you for just.
Well, you can't get a 10. I mean,
one bite. Everyone knows the rules.
It's a little scoring. Yeah. Okay. So my feedback, my Gary Plague feedback to you, I would have. Well, number one, there was the free part in that's people would have loved, right? Yeah. The hungry student piece, I probably would have talked about earlier, and just the storytelling. I would have maybe told a story of one of the customers that you've worked with. And how you've helped them achieve a little bit more. Yeah. You want that 8? I mean, it could have been a 1.8. I mean,
no, that's great. That's great advice. That is great advice. And then here, I'll throw in the dog too, right? Because everyone loves the dog.
Everyone loves the dog. Now people will, stop on their scroll on Facebook and be like, look, there's a little puppy. There you go. All right, so go to, if I remember correctly, CrimDellSBN.com. And then there, what happens?
Oh, so there's a contact us form. So you can see our team. We have our team out there. We've got some more information about the types of services we provide, whether it's in finance, marketing, operations. And then there's a contact us form there. That's super easy. We just need some basic information. You can email us with your interest. We'll pick up the phone and talk you through the process, just so you understand the commitment that, you're also bringing into this. And then, you just become an SBDC client. We can walk you through that process. We will literally on the phone take you through the SBDC portal. And then we pair you with a business. Like I would say from contacting us, you could have your students' business pair the next day. Like, it is that quick turnaround.
And if you're worried because it's 2020, you can do this all using technology, like you said.
Yep.
Which I think is great too, because think about how much drive time and transportation time of just the unnecessary, right? I don't know if you guys have ever heard the stories of Jim and his what does he call those things, Tim? When he drives to those places. The road show or something. Road show. So he goes on these road shows, not to pick on Jim, but Jim would literally drive like places that are like 90 minutes from him. And I'm like, Jim, that's 3 hours of time. Now he has three more 60-minute sessions with people. And so the efficiency that people don't even realize that technology can help them with, I think, is something that is tremendous value in this. And so it's really exciting. Anything that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about?
I'd say just reach out, get in touch. We are here. We actually tonight, Thursday evening, we're offering a crisis conversation with Rachel Frazier, and if you haven't RSVP'd for that one, you might be late, but we'll offer another one in 2 weeks, and they'll keep going through the summer. But or you can send us an email, and we are pretty adaptable. We could probably get you in. We know the people running it.
When school goes back into session, will you take new businesses?
Yes.
That's the plan. Yeah. Right now we have a set amount of funding, because something that's really important to both Vicki and I is that we're able to pay our students for the time they put in. We much prefer paid internships over unpaid internships for a variety of reasons we don't need to get into now. So our plan is to keep this going. We're looking for additional sources of funding to support students in these efforts. We will make sure we keep this free for businesses in the area. So at this stage, absolutely, we'll still be working come fall, maybe come spring, and we want this to keep going after.
Awesome.
Very cool. And I think the key takeaway for me is, if you want something to happen, figure it out in whatever avenue possible. Throw out a lot of fishing. Go back. I gotta stop using that now. It's a terrible one. Try a lot of things and see which one sticks, and sometimes multiples will stick. Tim, any last words?
Yeah, I mean, I highly recommend the businesses contact Cara, Vicki, CrimDell, the SBDC. I mean, I've had the opportunity to work firsthand with the students, and it's amazing the amount of energy they pour their heart and soul into trying to figure out the problems to best help the business owner. It's free, like you both said, so there's nothing to lose and only to gain. So highly recommend taking advantage of this opportunity. It's not going to last long.
Did I get that right?
One less M.
Gosh.
It was going to be so helpful.
Well, you know what? And just look, I was just showing you that when you make a mistake, how easy it is to fix it if you allow feedback.
And you can't be afraid to make a mistake.
See, I took that mistake intentionally.
Now it's a lesson. Yeah.
Now it's a lesson. So go to CrimDellSBN.com, click the contact us page. You guys can get, if you're a small business owner, you can get help from one of the MBA students, like the two ladies on the screen, and should be a great thing.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, thank you for your time. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been super fun. Thank you.
Absolutely. Tim, appreciate you.
I appreciate you. I appreciate it.
Enjoy your continued journey to 3,000 days of running at least 2 miles. And congratulations on running the entire Interstate 81 of Virginia in less than 40 days.
Wow. Congrats.
What a rock star he is.
Tell you what.
You just pound that pavement.
Every day.
There it is. Appreciate you guys being here. Go to CrimDellSBN.com or HRSBDC.com as well if you guys want help for your small business. Until next time, I'm Zack Miller. That's Tim. Somewhere over there is Cara and Vicki. The whole Brady Bunch thing is just, I don't know what to do. But appreciate you being here. And until next time, peace and pancakes, y'all.